He's perhaps the most storied hero in all of Greek and Roman mythology. He participated in so many quests that they fall into 3 categories: general deeds, side deeds, and the subject of this video, his 12 labors. I'm talking about Heracles as part of Uncomfortable Game Short's Guide to Greek Mythology, inspired by playing Hades 2. Make sure you sub and share so it's easier to find me in the future. Heracles was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene, who was the granddaughter of Perseus, the Greek hero who killed Medusa. Alcmene was the wife of Amphitryon, but Zeus fell madly in love with her, so while Amphitryon was away at war, Zeus ordered Helios, the sun god, to take 3 days off, effectively giving him 3 nights to disguise himself and trick Alcmene into having a baby. So, after Zeus leaves and Amphitryon returns, neither mortal figures out the deception, and 9 months later, Alcmene is due to give birth to twins. Hera, wife of Zeus, learned about Zeus's affair and in usual form decided to punish his illegitimate child. First, she gets Zeus to promise that any child born this night from the line of Perseus will become High King. Zeus, knowing his child is due soon, agrees, but Hera also gets Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth, to delay Alcmene's children from being born by sitting cross-legged and knotting up her clothes. Hera then speeds up the birth of Eurystheus, another descendant of Perseus, causing him to be born before the children of Alcmene and thus becomes High King. Hera would have forced Eileithyia to keep Heracles trapped in the womb forever, but one of Alcmene's servants lies to Eileithyia and tells her that Alcmene already gave birth, which gives her such a shock that she jumps up, unknotting her clothes and legs, initiating the birth of our divine hero, Heracles, as well as his twin mortal brother, Iphicles. Now, Alcmene's terrified that Hera will have revenge on her and her family, so she leaves baby Heracles to die, but he's saved by his half-sister, the goddess Athena. She takes the newborn to Hera, who didn't recognize the baby, and, out of pity, agrees to breastfeed him, but baby Heracles hurts her while drinking, and so she pushes him away. In the process, she spills some milk, which turns into our Milky Way that you can see in the night sky. Luckily, Heracles drank enough of the goddess's milk to gain unimaginable strength. Athena then returns the baby to his mortal parents, who initially call him Alcetus. His name was later changed in a failed attempt to calm Hera, as his name, Heracles, means something like the glory or pride of Hera. It didn't work. She remained bitter and spiteful for a long time. When Heracles and his twin brother were only 8 months old, Hera sent 2 giant snakes into the baby's room. Although Iphicles freaked out, Heracles acted quickly and strangled the 2 snakes. Later, when his parents found him playing with the dead serpents, they sought the prophet Teiresias, who predicted a strange future for the boy, one in which he slays many monsters. Heracles grew up a marvel in strength and endurance, surpassing his peers and teachers in all athletic pursuits, but his brutish demeanor had difficulties with softer skills like music and art. This is one of the major differences between Heracles and Theseus, son of Poseidon, and another beloved Greek hero. Theseus had similar strength to Heracles, but was more cultured and also excelled in wit and tact. Unfortunately, Heracles didn't possess these gifts and instead had a quick temper, and one day, when his music teacher was scolding him for a poor performance, Heracles killed him with a lyre. As a punishment, Heracles was sent away from his parents and forced to live in the countryside to work as a shepherd. It was during this time that Heracles heard of a fierce lion that had been ravaging cattle in the area. He hunted for it and killed it with either his bare hands or a club, either way an impressive feat. Upon his return, he ran into a band of ambassadors from a nearby city. They explained that they've come to pick up the annual tribute that the city of Thebes had to pay their king, otherwise the Theban people would have their hands, ears, and noses sliced off. Heracles was so outraged by this threat to his people that he sliced off the hands, ears, and nose of the ambassadors and sent them back to their king, as tribute of course. This was taken as an act of war, but Heracles led his Theban comrades into battle and they won, beating back the tyrant king's forces. As a result, King Creon of Thebes gave Heracles his daughter, Megara, as a wife. This represents perhaps the happiest time in Heracles' life. He and Megara lived happily together and had 3 sons, and Heracles expected to one day take the throne as king once his father-in-law Creon passed away. But alas, all good things come to an end. After a long trip away from his family, Heracles returned to find that King Creon had been murdered by another tyrant named Lycus, and that his wife and children were cast out and left to starve. Enraged again, Heracles demolishes Lycus and his forces and goes to reunite with his family when Hera, remembering her grudge, struck him with a fit of madness, and in the confusion he actually murders his own wife and children. In some versions he only kills his sons and Megara dies of a broken heart, but either Either way, his family is dead, and when he comes to his senses and realizes what happened, he almost loses his own will to live. Eager to make amends, he flees to Delphi to consult with the priestess and ask if there's anything he can do. He's told that he must journey to Tiryns, where his cousin, King Eurystheus, remember him? He's the baby that Hera had born before Heracles, will give him a series of labors or quests that'll test his courage and strength. Ironically, Eurystheus means broad strength, but in truth, he was a sniveling coward and was worried about Heracles since he also had royal blood and was a formidable rival for the throne. But Heracles plays nice and offers his service to the king. Eurystheus wants to give Heracles an impossible job, something that will surely kill him. So for his first labor, Heracles is asked to kill the monstrous Nemean Lion whose claws and teeth could slice through any armor and had a hide so strong that no mortal weapon could pierce it, and was at least twice the size of the fearsome lion that Heracles had killed several years back. Undeterred, our hero embarks on his journey, and after several days of hunting, he finds the beast's cave, hides in a nearby bush, and throws a large stone near the entrance to lure the lion out. The Nemean Lion sprang out of the cave, ready to maul and fight. Heracles fires an arrow which bounces off the lion like a Nerf bullet. He realizes that the lion's hide would make incredibly light and strong armor, and wishes to Zeus for help in defeating it. Zeus heard his plea, sent Athena, goddess of skilled warriors, down, and unbeknownst to Heracles, filled him with courage. He stepped into the open, chased the lion into his cave, and throttles it with his bare hands. But now he had to skin the monster. His weapons wouldn't cut it, so clever Heracles used one of the lion's own claws that could pierce any armor to cut the impenetrable hide. Even though the lion had lost, ever spiteful Hera venerated the lion by turning it into the constellation Leo, another slap in Heracles' face. A long time had passed since Heracles had started his first quest, and all began to think that he had failed. Yet, there he returned, adorned with his trademark lion skin and club, and the people rejoiced as they could now tend to their fields without fear of the mighty lion. That coward Eurystheus was terrified when he saw Heracles wearing the lion's hide. He cried that Heracles wasn't allowed inside the city anymore, and that he'd have to wait outside the gates and communicate through the king's herald from now on. He even ordered a giant bronze jar to be created as a bunker if Heracles ever came back. Heracles is then told that he has to slay the water snake called Hydra. He recruits his nephew, Iphicles' son, Aeolus, to help carry his stuff, and the two set off to search the marshes for the Hydra. The goddess Athena had given Heracles a couple tips before the battle. She suggested firing burning arrows into the lair to lure it out into the open. Heracles did this, and when the Hydra emerged, he was surprised to see how many heads it had. He quickly began cutting them off, only to find that each cut head would grow two more. Right then, a gigantic crab emerged from the swamp and grabbed his ankle. The crab was easy enough to dispatch and later gets turned into the constellation Cancer, but Heracles needed to figure out how to defeat the Hydra. He called to Aeolus to help, and the quick-thinking lad brought torches with which to burn and cauterize the necks where the heads were cut off, ensuring that no new heads could sprout in their place. Eventually, there was only one head left, the middle and immortal one. Heracles removed it and crushed it under a boulder, which, as legend has it, still remains by a road outside of Lerna. Before leaving, Heracles dips his arrows in the venomous blood of the Hydra to give his bows plus infinity to poison attack. This turns out to be both a blessing and a curse, as we shall see. He returns to the city and relays the story to Eurystheus, who refused to acknowledge the job. He says Heracles cheated by asking Aeolus for help and sends him on another job to catch the Ceryneian deer. This beautiful deer had antlers made out of gold, and it even had bronze hooves, but there was a problem. He wasn't allowed to just kill it since it belonged to Artemis, the famed goddess of the hunt. Heracles makes the short journey to the forest and spends a year tracking the deer down. Finally, he sees it and wounds it with a non-poison arrow. This gives him a chance to catch it and carry it back to town. Along the way, he runs into Artemis and her twin brother Apollo, a god of many things and likely to kill you from afar like his sister. They demand he gives back the deer, but Heracles blames the whole thing on Eurystheus, who sent him here in the first place. Artemis allows Heracles to take the deer, but warns him that it must be returned unharmed. I guess the wound that slowed it down didn't count. So Heracles carries it back, shows it to the herald, and sets it free. Eurystheus wanted to test Heracles' swiftness again, and consequently sent him to catch the Erymanthian boar alive. Side D. While trying to track the boar, Heracles runs into Pholus, who lives in a remote cave with some centaurs, who were out at the time. Pholus offers Heracles some meat, and they begin to eat together. He notices some wine nearby and asks for a drink. Pholus warns him that the wine belongs to the centaurs and that he should leave it alone, but Heracles doesn't care and opens the wine anyways. The scent wafted in the air, luring some neighboring centaurs carrying weapons of stones and tree trunks. Heracles is shocked to see such aggression from neighbors, noticing he's stealing wine, and flips out, throwing torches and firing arrows. The centaurs flee and get Chiron, an impressive and immortal centaur. This guy's actually a big deal. His dad is Kronos, meaning Zeus is his half-brother. He learned crazy healing from Apollo and even trained Achilles in combat. They clash, and in the battle, Chiron gets wounded by one of Heracles' poison arrows. The Greeks loved these paradoxes. An immortal centaur with no cure or antidote to an agonizingly painful poison that always kills. The solution was too confusing for me. Look it up and see for yourself. In the end, the remaining centaurs, including Nessus, who plays a serious role in Heracles' eventual death, scatter to the winds. Pholus then comes out of the cave to see what happened, picks up an arrow and wonders how it could have killed such a giant centaur. Unfortunately for him, the arrow slips, hits him, and he dies too. Absolutely crazy! Remember, this dude only offered free meat and advice not to touch the wine, and now he's dead! Heracles then leaves the scene to find the boar he came here for in the first place. When he finds it, he easily chases it down, picks it up, and carries it back to the palace. By now, he's about done with Eurystheus and his stupid job, so he breaks the rules and carries the boar right up to the bronze jar where the king was hiding and threatens to drop it in there. Eurystheus wanted to get back at Heracles for that boar scare, so he ordered him to go to King Augean to clean his stables. Only there was a massive amount of animals and nobody ever cleaned the stables of the diseased poop. Upon seeing this, Heracles offers a deal to the king. He says, "If I can clean your stables in 1 day, will you give me 1/10 of your herd?" King Augean thinks nobody can possibly clean these disgusting stables in a day and agrees. That's when Heracles, under the guidance of Athena, who helps him for most of his journeys, diverts 2 rivers to flow through the stables and easily removes all that poop. With his task done, he asks for his 10th of the herd, but the king backs out of the deal, claiming that Heracles can't take payment if King Eurystheus ordered him to help. Heracles does not forget this slap and returns for vengeance later in life. Anyways, he makes his way back to Eurystheus without a herd of farm animals and tells the king's herald everything, including how King Augean stiffed him on the deal. Wouldn't you know it, that jerk Eurystheus refused to count this job as well since Heracles had asked for payment. For his 6th labor, Heracles was tasked with killing a flock of human-eating Stymphalian birds who had arrow-firing wings and armor-piercing beaks. To accomplish this task, Heracles used some bronze castanets given to him by the gods, and with all his might made such a loud clatter that the birds fled from the bushes they were hiding in. This made them easy prey for Heracles as he shot them with his arrows while they flew from the noise. Try as he might, Eurystheus simply could not find a challenge equal to Heracles, and now that he had already caught, killed, and cleaned up all the problems in the Peloponnesus, the southern end of mainland Greece, he had to find jobs further away. The 7th labor has a strange background. King Minos is another of Zeus's many children. He ruled Crete and had an exceptional navy and reign there. One day, while he was praying to Poseidon, the sea god summoned a magnificent white bull from the water and told Minos to sacrifice it for him. Minos agreed, but switched the bull during the actual sacrifice since he wanted to keep the godly bull with him. Poseidon was not tricked and got his revenge by striking Minos' wife, Pasiphae, with a crazed passion and love for the white bull. She tried desperately to get the bull to love her back, but it ignored her every advance. So she instructed famed inventor and craftsman Daedalus to build her a wooden cow disguise so that the bull could, love her back. And it worked! Later, she gives birth to a half-bull, half-man called the Minotaur, which so embarrassed Minos and his wife that they had Daedalus build a giant labyrinth with which to hide the bull man. Later still, another hero named Theseus comes to deal with this loose end, but for Heracles, we're only concerned with the Minotaur's father, the white bull which remained in Crete. It was to be caught alive and brought back to King Eurystheus. So Heracles grabbed the bull by its horns, threw it into the sea, and rode it like a cowboy all the way back to Tiryns, where Eurystheus was waiting. Upon showing the bull to the king's herald as proof, the bull escaped and ran north to the plains of Marathon, where Theseus, bane of this bull and his bloodline, shows up and deals with it later. On to the 8th labor. Heracles had to travel to faraway Thrace, where a sinister king named Diomedes, son of Ares, the god of war, raised horses that ate human flesh. Heracles recruits some sailors to help him reach Thrace, and when they arrive, they stealthily try to capture the horses. In the process, they're caught and alarms ring throughout the city. They race the horses towards their ship, but King Diomedes and his men are in hot pursuit. Heracles leaves the horses with the others and turns to fight the encroaching armies, which he easily does, and captures King Diomedes in the process. When he returned to the crew, he discovers that one of the sailors named Abderus had been overpowered and eaten by the horses. Seeing the horses still hungry, he throws them Diomedes and the horses dine again. Now full and much calmer, Heracles is able to corral them into the hold on the ship and has Abderus buried on the spot that later becomes the city Abdera. Upon returning to Eurystheus, the horses are inspected, and some legends claim the king had the horses mate with his own, creating the finest horses in Greece. Either way, the horses were eventually released and, unfortunately for them, got eaten by wolves in the wilderness. Now, Eurystheus had a daughter named Admete, and she heard of a group of powerful, man-hating female warriors known as the Amazons, who lived near the southern shore of the Black Sea. All Heracles had to do was go there and win a fabulous girdle with beautiful gems gifted by Ares to his daughter and their queen, Hippolyta. Since people rarely wear girdles nowadays, it was like a belt worn just above the hip. If a lady unties it, it meant she was interested in you, so this labor looked like a unique challenge. Heracles had to win the heart of this insanely powerful woman from a tribe that hated most men. So he recruits a band of solid Greek heroes and sets sail. When they arrive, they offer to entertain Queen Hippolyta on their ship, and when you know it, handsome Heracles' charm was too much for her, and she willingly offers her girdle to him. But Hera, who was watching this entire thing, got so upset by how easily Heracles was winning this job that she disguises herself as an Amazon woman and runs through the tribe, telling everyone that Heracles is trying to hurt the queen. All the women arm themselves and fight with the Greeks. Heracles then resorts to killing the queen and taking her girdle, which he dutifully gives to Eurystheus, who, in turn, gives it to his delighted daughter. His daughter might have been happy, but Eurystheus definitely wasn't. He was really starting to panic, since there weren't many deeds left and Heracles was still alive. So for his 10th labor, Heracles had to head west where few had gone before, ensuring that many monsters and dangers laid on that path. He was instructed to capture the red cattle of Geryon, an ogre with 3 bodies attached at the hip, who, along with his 2-headed dog Orthrus, guarded the cattle. They lived on an island far west in what the Greeks called Oceanus, that great river that encircled the edge of the world. Heracles killed exotic beasts as he went and eventually came to the western edge of the Mediterranean. There he erected 2 stone pillars at the mouth of the sea where it meets the Atlantic Ocean, and they were dubbed the Pillars of Heracles. It was said that these pillars prevented monsters from entering the Mediterranean as their bodies couldn't fit between them. Today they're called the Rock of Gibraltar in Spain and the Rock of Ceuta in Tangiers. After creating these stone pillars, Heracles traveled the hot sands of the continent of Africa and got so exasperated by the heat that in his frustration he shot an arrow at Helios, the god of the sun. Instead of being angry, Helios actually admired how bold Heracles was and gave him his prized gold cup, not to drink from, but to use as a boat. Now sailing in a golden cup, he reaches the island with the cattle, finds Orthrus, and easily kills the poor 2-headed dog. He then takes all the cattle and starts sailing away with them. Geryon notices the shining gold cup floating in the water and realizes that his cattle are being stolen. He tries to attack Heracles, but for this, he's met with 3 of Heracles' arrows, 1 for each of his heads. Eventually, Heracles manages to get his cup back to Spain, where he travels farther inland. He returns Helios' cup with great thanks and starts marching the cattle towards the southern reaches of what is now France. For some reason, he decides to turn right and travels down the length of Italy as he makes his way back to Eurystheus. Along the journey, a 3-headed, fire-breathing monster named Cacus stole some of the cattle without Heracles noticing. Cacus hid the cattle in a cave near what is now Rome, but unfortunately for him, that laid along the path that Heracles was traveling anyway. When he was passing by, some of the stolen cattle were bellowing from the hiding spot. Upon hearing this, Heracles found the cattle and forced his way in. Cacus released black smoke from his jaw and shot fire at Heracles, but the hero quickly dodged and attacked in the thick darkness of the smoke, caught Cacus and choked the life from him. He then took back the cattle and resumed his journey. Stories of Heracles and the death of Cacus echoed across Italy, and he was met with cheers and adoration as he continued south. There's also legends that Hercules was instrumental in founding Herculaneum, south of present-day Rome, which was covered in ash during an eruption by Mount Vesuvius around 79 ACE. This was actually the first city found under the ash of Mount Vesuvius. Pompeii, a much more popular site, was found later. Heracles continued traveling until he reached the southernmost tip of the boot. Here, Hera caused one of the bulls to go mad, and it jumped into the water and swam across to Sicily. Heracles had to swim after it and get it back, but a local king named Heracles found the bull first and challenged Heracles to a fight for it. Wow, what an idiot! Heracles won, obviously, and took back his missing bull. Ultimately, he brings most of the cattle back to Eurystheus and awaits his next job, which was to steal golden apples from the sacred garden tended by the Hesperides, the nymphs of evening. This garden was given to Hera as a gift when she married Zeus, but the location was unknown to mortals and was guarded by a fearsome 100-headed dragon called Ladon. Heracles didn't know where to start looking, but he had an idea to first find Nereus, the old man of the sea, son of Titans, to see if he knew the location. Heracles managed to capture Nereus, and although the sea god tried transforming into many slippery sea creatures to escape, Heracles' grasp was too tight and he was forced to give Heracles directions to the garden. Along the way, he ends up in another side deed where he crosses paths with Antaeus, a giant who made his house out of the bones of those he challenged to a wrestling match. Heracles took the challenge and tried slamming Antaeus into the ground again and again. Each time the giant hit the ground, he was renewed with strength and vigor. It was then that Heracles remembered Antaeus was the son of Gaia, Mother Earth, and was regaining energy each time he touched the earth. With some quick thinking, he lifted Antaeus so that he couldn't touch the ground, waited for the giant's strength to wane, and then throttled him to death. After the victory, Heracles comes across a son of Poseidon named King Busiris. Long ago, his land was suffering from extreme drought, so he called for a Greek seer to prophesy what he must do, and was instructed to sacrifice foreigners annually to appease the gods. So Busiris started by sacrificing the seer first, and a new foreigner each year thereafter. By the time Heracles came by, the king was desperate for a new sacrifice and felt that Heracles would make a fine one indeed. Heracles was surrounded and informed of his fate, to which he willingly let himself be bound, captured, and taken to the king. It was then that Heracles simply broke free of the pathetic shackles and took the king and his sons and sacrificed them to the gods instead. Having trouble finding his way towards the gardens, he runs into Prometheus, a titan god who was punished for stealing fire from the gods to give to mortals. Prometheus tells Heracles to find the titan named Atlas, who was on the losing side of the war between titans and gods and was punished to eternally hold up the heavens lest they crush the earth below. With Prometheus's directions and advice, he finds Atlas and asks him to retrieve the golden apples for him. Apparently, this job would have been too dangerous for Heracles. The titan agrees since Heracles offers to hold up the heavens while he's away. Atlas marches off to the garden, past the Hesperides, kills the 100-headed Ladon, and brings the apples back to where he left Heracles. Although the titan was not too smart, he was savvy enough to realize that he was in fact free and didn't have to take the heavens back from Heracles. So he tells Heracles not to worry and that he'll take the apples to Eurystheus for him. But Heracles realizes what was going on and tricks the titan by initially agreeing to the plan, but complains that the weight was uncomfortable for him and asks the titan to hold the sky for just a second while he adjusts a pillow to cushion the weight. Atlas agrees, takes the sky off his shoulders, and Heracles bolts with the apples, laughing all the way. When he showed the golden fruit to Eurystheus, the king was in awe of them, but realized that he couldn't keep them. Hera might get mad and gives them back to Heracles, who, in turn, gets his goddess friend Athena to return them to the garden. Heracles had seen such hardships and has been doing such insane and often denigrating tasks for King Eurystheus that he was probably a lot harder, more cynical, and frustrated than we know. But finally, he arrived at his final job and penance for murdering his family, even if it was Hera's fault. However, the final labor was a truly difficult one. Eurystheus demanded that Cerberus, the vicious three-headed guard dog of the underworld who had snakes for a mane, was to be captured and brought back to the city. The king thought this task would be particularly difficult since Cerberus was renowned and Heracles had already killed his siblings, like the water snake Hydra and the two-headed dog Orthrus, likely making Cerberus extra mad. Undeterred, Heracles traveled to the underworld with some help from Athena and Hermes. There are some events where he runs into the spirits of some comrades, but for this labor, he eventually finds Hades and asks for permission to take Cerberus to complete his deed. Hades agrees, but only if Heracles can tame the wild three-headed beast without using any weapons. This didn't sit right with Heracles, but what could he do? He set down his club, bow, and arrows and relied on his trusty Nemean Lion skin to protect him. Upon reaching the guard dog, he began to wrestle with the giant beast. Although being attacked by tooth, claw, and snakebite, he held on and managed to wrap a chain around the beast with which he was able to subdue it. When he brought Cerberus to the weak king, he lost his cool and demanded that Heracles return it to the underworld. After dropping the dog off at home, Heracles left the gates of the underworld a free man, no longer bound by senseless labors and self-important kings and gods. There are many more tales to tell of this champion among heroes, but let's end this video with his ending, the death of Heracles. After the labors, Heracles settles down in Tiryns and begins a search for a new wife. He hears that King Eurytus, his former archery teacher, has offered the hand of his beautiful daughter Iole to anyone who could win an archery challenge. Heracles attends and easily wins this challenge, but the king takes back his offer, saying that he was afraid for his daughter to marry Heracles, who, without warning, had already murdered his own wife and kids in the past. Heracles was upset, but leaves without a bride. In one version of this story, he kills the king and his sons, except for Iphitus, who was fond of Heracles, and then steals Iole from the palace. Later, when Iphitus comes to visit Heracles, Hera strikes Iphitus mad, causing him to fall to his death from a great height. Heracles is left with the blame, and to make up for this injustice, he goes to the oracle at Delphi for purification again, but is refused help since this was the second time he's asked the oracle to cleanse him of such heinous and uncivilized acts. So he brilliantly doubles down and bursts into the temple, steals a holy relic, and runs off, claiming that he'll just create his own oracle. As he fled, Apollo came down and tried to wrestle the relic away from the hero. The two strained and tugged until Zeus intervened, and Apollo agreed to purify Heracles only if he served a woman for 3 years. Heracles accepts these terms and is brought to a slave market, bound by ropes and his word to the gods. At this time, Queen Omphale from Lydia was out shopping for some slaves, as royalty thinks they should, and she spies muscular and ruggishly handsome Heracles. She immediately buys him as a special side piece, and the two of them actually enjoy each other's company until 3 years pass and Heracles up and leaves Omphale to resume his life. He decides to seek out a woman named Deianira, which translates to man-killer, who he was told he should marry by her dead brother that Heracles met in one of his travels to the underworld. This seemed like a good tip, so he traveled to find Deianira and runs into Achelous, a river god and son of Titans, who's also looking to marry her. Achelous could transform into a powerful bull and fights Heracles for Deianira's hand, but Heracles overpowers him, snaps off a horn, and wins his prize, a new wife. While traveling home together, they run into Nessus. Remember him? He's one of the centaurs who lived with Pholus and lost in that great battle with Chiron. Times are tough, so Nessus has been ferrying people across the river Evenus for a small fee. Heracles agrees to wait or swim across the river, it's not clear, while Nessus taxis Deianira across the river. Along the journey, Nessus decides to make a pass at Deianira, which Heracles notices and fires one of his poison arrows to kill the centaur. Nessus staggers on shore, dying, and with his last breath tells Deianira that he has magical blood that, if it touched a man of her choosing, that man would never be unfaithful to her. This was a dirty trick, for the blood now contained the poison from the arrow, but, unaware, she collects the blood on some fabric and saves the liquid in a vial just in case she needs it. Time passes where Heracles and Deianira are very happy together until, upon returning from another of his great conquests, Heracles brings home Iole, the woman he once tried to win in a contest, and Deianira begins to worry that he will leave her. She pours Nessus's blood on some clothing and has a messenger named Lycus bring it to him to wear at his customary sacrifice to the gods as thanks for the victory. Heracles puts on the clothing and the poison begins to burn his skin and cause untold agony within him. Blaming Lycus, he throws him into the sea, where they named the Lycadian Islands after him. Hylas, eldest son of Heracles and Deianira, tells his mother what happened, and she decides to kill herself for the role in his agonizing death. Heracles, meanwhile, asks his followers to bring him to the sacrificial pyre, but none dare light it for him. Luckily, a passing shepherd named Philoctetes, or in some versions the son of the shepherd, dared to do it, and for this, Heracles gifted Philoctetes his famed bow and quiver, which played a role in the later Trojan War. Finally, engulfed in fire, Heracles Heracles' mortal life, filled with agony and strife, is ended. But Zeus saves his son by bringing him to the heavens, where he finally becomes a god and is eventually wed to the goddess Hebe, or youth. Uncomfortable Game Shorts is an underrated channel that makes easy guides and reviews for lots of different games. This video is like nothing I've made before, but playing Hades 2 got me reading some of my old mythology texts. If you want more, watch these videos and share my channel with friends and family.